The radio program by the hosts, co-hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions and responsibility of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Genesis Radio, www.genesisradio.com, Genesis Radio's owners, management, or affiliates.
It's another Thursday. You are on air with Ron and Conrad coming from Gynesis Radio, right here in beautiful Pocono Mountains, Pennsylvania. So today, as we come on the air, there was another tragedy, another senseless tragedy up in Maine, where a gunman opened fire on, well, I believe so far that the body count is about 18 people have died. in another senseless tragedy. And of course, our government response is the same as always. Our thoughts and prayers are going out to the families of those affected. No real legislation to keep guns out of the hands of people who have mental illness. With so much money flowing into Congress to prevent common sense legislation, we're just not. So, I want to send my condolences to families of those who are lost up in Maine. How many times has that happened in this country? It's been countless times that we've had to experience these sort of killings, these mass killings, and it just seems that it's going to continue. So again, uh, prayers for the families who lost a loved one, and for the folks up there, I know it's a dangerous situation. You're still at large, so there's a shelter in place there, and let's hope that this individual is found soon. So today, it's me and Mastermind CP Square. My partner in time, or Romane, wasn't able to come today. I'm a little under the weather, so we're going to send a shout out to her. And hopefully, she'll be with us next week. And also, we want to say hi to Mama C down in the Deep South. I know she's enjoying the restaurant. I've seen some of her posts, so she's really having a good time. But today, I wanted to kind of finish off some things we're talking about the last couple of weeks, and that's the ongoing situation. So I would like some audience participation. Some of the listeners to call in and offer their opinion. One, as it relates to the Middle East, what do you really think is going on over there? And who do you really think, or who do you believe is the aggressor in this situation in the Middle East? I know who the media is telling us, who is the aggressor, who's the terrorist, but I just want to know, what do you think, the American people? Because ultimately, if this situation were to heat up, and apparently it's headed in that direction, it will be American mothers and fathers, sons and daughters that will be going off to fight another war in the desert. A war that we can ill stand right now. The economy, even though we're told is doing so well, I guess, the vast majority of average Americans do not see any improvement in the economy or their financial situation. And also, the second question I have is, now that so many members of Donald Trump's inner circle are jumping off the bandwagon and are working out deals to testify against him, in your opinion, is it more likely than not that Donald Trump will be convicted and could possibly go to jail? So we're going to open up the phone lines. The number here is 888-304-4401. Again, 888-304-4401. Just give us your opinion on, one or both topics. Which do you think? What do you think about what's happening in the Middle East? And of course, what happens there will definitely have an effect on us here. It already has. And the situation domestically, our political situation, it is in turmoil right now. A new speaker was just elected last night after 22 days of not having a speaker in place, and the legislative branch being at a standstill with so much happening in the world. We were basically dead in the water. So, folks, I just want to know what you think about that. So, while I have the mastermind in the studio, TP, on the first subject, what's going on in the Middle East? What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I think it's a sad situation.
That's true.
I see no winners
Mm-hmm.
in that situation. I see losers, because sometimes less is more.
Mm-hmm.
The damage had already been done in terms of the Palestinians and the Israelis. The Palestinians, I believe, had gotten to a point where they had accepted the loss of the land to a degree.
Mm-hmm.
And they were willing to settle for a two-state option for the land they had,
Mm-hmm.
and independence for the land that they had.
Mm-hmm.
And the Israelis, after they had occupied all the land that was Palestinian land, after the 1973 wars and all those other wars that they had in the 60s, where they occupied all the land and just kept it, right? I think they should have been good with that. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But I think there was a little greed there. You know what I mean? But I think sometimes less is more. Leave well enough alone, right?
Mm-hmm.
And now I see a lose-lose situation on both sides. How
You
do
think
we fix
you
that?
think Israel's going to lose something?
Yes. Yes, I think they're going to lose something because, you know, you can't be the victim all the time, because the reality is, you know, what Hamas did was insightful, and Hamas has to pay for what they did. There's no, you know, right is right, wrong is wrong.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Because I think they were on their way to a two-state resolution.
You know, it seems that every time that subject comes up, there is some sort of flare-up,
Yeah,
that prevents us from actually seeing a two-state solution.
yeah.
I mean, technically, if you think about it, what we have is a two-state solution now. There's the state of Israel, and then there is what's left of Palestine, which is now the Gaza Strip, right?
In
So
the West
these-
Bank.
Well, I think what happened was, I think the West Bank was taken in 67,
Mhm.
if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
So what you have is the Gaza Strip, right? I think it's 25 miles long, about 6 miles wide. And now that is shrinking because Israel has been bombing basically since the onset, like 3 weeks ago. Israel has been, carrying out bombing runs, and
Carpet bombing at that.
yes, and they're talking about a ground assault. I'm not sure who you're going to fight in that area, in the Gaza Strip. Most of the people have fled. And for Hamas, how do they remain in this small area with little to no resources? Now, I'm just someone who just doesn't believe the government's official story. And it seems to me very unlikely that Hamas could have carried out such a coordinated attack on Israel. Now, going back as far as World War II, right? The Nazi government, they realized something. There is a belief, and I think it's one of the laws of thermodynamics, that out of chaos comes order, right? So there is a belief that chaos must exist and order will come from chaos. And I think it was Adolf Hitler and Joseph Goebbels who used that to their advantage. So when Hitler was elected in 1932, he was the most popular guy, right? Prior to Hitler, Germany was a democratic society. When this dude comes in, he wants to run everything.
Sounds like somebody I know.
Oh yeah. How do you do that? Well, you create the chaos and then you give them order, your brand of order. So now in the Middle East, what we have is a chaotic situation. We have Israel that says they were attacked on October 7th by basically rocket attack from Gaza. They're saying that Hamas is responsible. How do we know that Hamas is behind this? How do we differentiate between a Hamas fighter and anybody else in the region for that matter.
Hezbollah.
Well, but I mean, how do you differentiate? They're not a recognized army. They don't wear uniforms. So how do you know who's behind the mask? You know, the other day there was an Israeli hostage who was released, allegedly by Hamas, and you saw the Hamas guy, alleged Hamas guy, bringing a woman so she could be evaluated, medically, stuff like that, and she shook his hand.
I saw that, and she tapped him on his cheek.
Now, we never saw his face.
No.
So how do we know who's behind that mask?
Mm-hmm.
How do we know who carried out this attack on the state of Israel?
Mm-hmm.
The media was very quick to say, well, it was Hamas. How did the media know, at least the U.S. media, how do you know when during that time you didn't have any reporters on the ground, in Gaza anyway, which is where we're told the rockets had come from? So if you're not there, and at the time of the attack, we're told there was no intelligence, how do you know?
Well, my question is this. How did those rockets get past the Iron Dome? 2,000 rockets.
Right. Now, see,
how did they get past the Iron Dome?
And that's why I wanted, the people, the listeners, to give their opinion, because I think that a lot of people in this country are skeptical for the same reasons that you are, and also the fact that Hamas was able, if this is Hamas, to move so much in terms of weaponry and men into position to attack under the nose of the best, and I mean the best intelligence in the world.
They have Pegasus.
And nobody saw anything. Nobody heard anything. I mean,
but
Mossad is still tracking down Nazis today.
But you want to hear something?
Sure.
Me being in the technology field,
mm-hmm.
and everybody's talking about this, right? And we were working on a big project the other day. Somebody got caught with ransomware, a big school district in Jersey. So we were all in there working on that. So I'm in a room, I want to call it like a think tank
mm-hmm.
of nerds. And this was the topic, right? And we said, how could these antiquated people pull this off?
Mm-hmm.
And you know what they said? They use reverse technology to pull this off.
Mm.
And I said, well, how do you figure that out? Now, this is a room full of geeks,
mm-hmm.
nerds. They said, everybody's watching technology, electronic phones,
mm-hmm.
cell phones, computers, internet, Wi-Fi. That's what you're watching.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's what everybody's zeroed in on. He said, but if you go back to the old way of doing things, landlines,
mm-hmm.
you know what I mean? Nobody's watching that.
Mm-hmm.
So they said that Hamas and all over the Middle East, they communicate via tunnels, via landlines.
Mm-hmm.
Old, antiquated ways.
But you know something? Israel, in their ability to collect data and intelligence, they're not going to rely just on their ability to collect information. They're going to have assets on the ground. In other words, they're going to have spies in Gaza and in other countries who are going to give them information firsthand, right? So it just seems unlikely that all of this could have taken place, especially under the Netanyahu regime, and no one see anything, no one hear anything. Well, an attack of this magnitude.
But you have to also keep in mind this.
Mm-hmm.
Inside of the government over there, the same things that we have going on here in the United States
mm-hmm.
with the Democratic Party
mm-hmm.
and the MAGA Party.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to say the Republican Party, the MAGA Party,
mm-hmm.
right? They have the same thing going on over there. know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So Netanyahu is not a very popular man over there.
I'm glad you said that,
You know what I mean?
because that's what I said about Hitler. And if you move forward, do you remember when George W. Bush was elected in 2000? We
Yeah.
had to go to the Supreme Court to decide who the president of the United States was.
And listen, and Al Gore bowed out
Won
gracefully.
the popular vote, right?
Yep.
So
But Al Gore bowed out gracefully.
he did.
Because he didn't want to put the country through it.
Did not want to see the country come apart.
Right.
But during that time, there were Republican operatives, and I shouldn't say Republican, let's say Bush operatives, who were down in Florida and other key states saying, stop the count. As soon as Bush went ahead, hey, stop the count, right? And this was going on all around the country. And we also know from, reports, there were people that went to vote, Black people, that showed up at their polling places and they had been purged, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this just didn't happen at one polling place in Florida. It was several, right?
Right.
So we talk about rigged election. Well, look, I didn't see anybody charging the Capitol then.
Right.
And clearly there was some irregularities.
Right.
But Bush was not very popular, right? Bush became popular after 9/11.
Yes.
After the buildings went down,
Yes.
chaos. Somebody gives you order. And who was delivering the order? George Bush. The same unpopular guy who had to go to the Supreme Court to get in the White House. Now, all of a sudden, he's the commander in chief. And he's the one everybody's looking to keep us safe. Well, you said it about Netanyahu. Yes, Netanyahu is in charge, or the
And he's
leader
also
of the Likud party.
and he's also been indicted.
He and his wife,
Yes.
right? So he's the leader of Likud, and Likud's been in, having some real serious problems over there. Other than his indictment, Israel is.
But you do know one of his things that he was promised was he wanted to wipe out Hamas.
Wipe out Hamas and
Right.
also bomb Iran.
And bomb Iran, right?
Mm-hmm.
But people in his party has said they wanted to wipe out all the Palestinians.
Mm-hmm. See, his party, right, would be the equivalent of the MAGA wing of the Republican Party, right?
No, they would be equivalent to the Nazis.
Well, that too, right? But what we have is a situation where he was losing popularity, and all of a sudden, an attack happens. Now, I'm not saying that it's not Hamas. I'm just saying I don't know.
It's
How
definitely
can we say for sure?
it's definitely Hamas. And let me just make this clear.
Mm-hmm.
I don't wish death and destruction on the Israelis
Mm-hmm.
or the Palestinians
Mm-hmm.
because I believe in the Ishmael and Isaac thing, right? I believe that that's a family issue
Mm-hmm.
that it's a bloodline issue that should be handled amongst the DNA family, right?
But that's just not going to happen.
I get it. I get that.
Mm-hmm.
But therein lies the issue, right? Now, all the other people that's involved, right, should mind their business, right? And the reason why I said Israel's going to be hurt by this, as well as the Palestinians going to be hurt by it because of Hamas, because you're getting strong talk from the UN,
Mm-hmm.
right? I have never heard somebody speak that harsh against Israel in the UN
But you know,
in my
something?
lifetime. When they said that for 56 years, the Israeli has oppressed the Palestinians,
Mhm.
taking their land. Listen, use those words: oppressed and taking their land.
Mhm.
You've never heard anybody talk like that, and they basically said, in layman's terms, take your foot off their neck.
Well, here's the thing. In the UN, right, in terms of countries that have UN sanctions, right, do you know who has the most UN sanctions of any country on the planet?
Who?
Israel. 96 UN resolutions against Israel. And do you know who protects Israel every time?
United States.
America.
Mhm.
We veto any sort of action against Israel. And that's why Netanyahu operates with impunity in Gaza and also around the Middle East region. I guess where America figures Central South America is our backyard, I guess he figures the Middle East is his backyard, and he can operate with impunity.
But you know what? But you know what I fear?
What's that?
What I truly fear is we have sold all of our weapons of mass destruction to Saudi Arabia,
Mm-hmm.
to Qatar, whatever how you pronounce it,
Mm-hmm.
all those countries over there,
Mhm.
right? We can't get enough ships in the area fast enough
Mm-hmm.
to save Israel,
Well, here's the thing.
even if we don't go nuclear. All right.
And
If
that
we-
would be
if-
that's mutually assured destruction, right?
Right.
That would be the destruction of every all living life,
Right.
all life on this planet.
Right. So
That's-
if we don't go nuclear, now listen. Now, if all those Muslims, Arabs decide that we don't like what y'all doing to the
Mhm.
Palestinians, despite our differences, we're going to band together
Mm-hmm.
and say, the hell with Uncle Sam, because it ain't enough of y'all to stop all of us. If we unify and we decide that we don't want them there anymore,
Mm-hmm.
what y'all gonna do?
Well, here's the thing. Before Israel began this campaign,
That's my worry.
Mhm. Before they began this campaign, one of the things they did was they normalized relations with Saudi Arabia
Mhm.
because they know Saudi Arabia has the money, has the capability, and the military, if they wanted to basically wipe Israel out, right? And for the U.S. to get involved in a conflict with Saudi Arabia, well, Saudi Arabia has, I think, $6 trillion or more in about 6 U.S. banks. We cannot,
They own Citibank.
right, cannot allow them to pull their money out of this country. So, you would put the U.S. and the European allies in an untenable situation.
which then makes China the most pivotal person in a unified Middle East.
Well,
The most pivotal person, country, don't become Russia,
Mhm.
it becomes China.
well, now I haven't verified this, but I did hear that the Chinese has sent a carrier into the region. I haven't verified that, but if that's the case, right, this is a real dangerous situation with Chinese and American fighting men and women so in such close proximity, and the situation in the Gaza is going definitely. I mean, it's not a matter of when. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when, right? Because Israel has fired some missiles into Lebanon. And Israel is saying that Iran is behind both Hamas and Hezbollah. So if that being the case, are we trying to entice Iran into a fight? And the U.S. has said that missiles from Iran are being fired at positions held by Americans in Syria and other countries.
In
Right.
Iraq.
Right. So it seems as if the goal is to go to war with Iran, to pick off America's so-called enemies one by one. However, the rest of the world, China, Russia, North Korea, Iran, and other countries, they see through this
Yes.
subterfuge, right?
Yes.
They know that, whoa. We see what's going on in, between Israel and Hamas. We know this is bigger than that.
Yeah.
We know that the U.S. did not send 2 carrier groups here to fight a small group like Hamas. We know that. We know they're here for a bigger reason.
That's right.
And we know their target is us.
Right.
You know, that happens. America, you know, we had body bags coming home from Iraq and Afghanistan. And both of those countries, Iraq and Afghanistan, do not have a military. Iran has a standing military of 2.3 million, and that doesn't include reserves. And it has been said for some time now that they believe that Iran has been developing not just nuclear technology, but hypersonic missiles.
But you know what? I've been watching a lot of news, and I've been watching a lot of European news stations, because we have different viewpoints, right? Because American news is sanitized.
Absolutely.
Right. And I pray that the Israelis listen to the Israeli people, not so much to the Israeli government, because there's a lot of people, Israelis, who want peace. They want peace. And believe it or not, they don't want to go into Gaza. I listened to some people saying that they didn't want all those settlements to be built. The government want to keep taking the land.
You know, I'm glad you brought that up, right?
The Israeli people want peace. See, they were willing to, if they voted with the Israeli people, if they put it on the ballot, a lot of the Israeli people would be willing to give back
some of
that land to maybe not what they had prior to 67, but a good portion of that. Maybe they would give back maybe 30% of the land that they took. They'll give back 30% of it.
Well, here's the thing. The Israeli people are divided. If you talk to some of the ultra-Orthodox that live here live in New York City, they will tell you that we cannot establish a homeland until Moshiach returns, right? So their belief is that once the Messiah returns, we will be established on the land. Other people who at one time were called Zionists said, no, we need a homeland for our people. Because, you know, there's a book out written several years ago by Norman Finkelstein. He was a professor, I believe it was at Hunter College in New York. He wrote a book called The Other 1492. And he said that, and if you read the book, and it's a small book, you know, look, not much more than a pamphlet, but the Jewish people have been run out of every country in Europe. And he lists the dates they will run out. Sometimes
that's sad.
Twice.
That's sad.
So for them,
that's terrible.
They had to find home, right? So they entered into agreements to get a homeland. Palestine was actually the third choice. But after these agreements were reached, you know, with the English and with the Nazi Party, after the war ended, a portion of Palestine was given to them. Well, after 1967, this was the 6-Day War. More was taken. I think it was the Golan Heights and the West Bank were taken. Then in 1973, the Yom Kippur War, more land was taken. And over time, what happened is Israel would build more settlements.
Right.
Again, the people of Israel are divided, right? Like, yo, listen, you know, we're supposed to wait for the Messiah to return and he will establish us on the land. Well, those same people that do not support Netanyahu, when you tell them that rockets are being fired and people are being taken hostage, they're worried about their safety, their security. Just like, you know, after 9/11, everybody was in a state of panic here. You know, we were told, oh, there's more terrorists lurking around every corner. People were afraid. Same thing in Israel. So the people that probably would not support Netanyahu under the circumstances would be like, you know what? He might be the best guy to protect us because now we've had this attack and the number of hostages keeps going up every day.
But
right.
But the thing is, Ron, a lot of that's propaganda. And I'm going to tell you why. Because I look at the BBC News, right? And then as I go further down to the different channels of foreign news, and I go on the internet and look at foreign news,
Mhm.
and they're literally talking to the people, the Israeli people,
Mhm.
you know. And I'm not talking about first of all, the largest population of Jewish people in the countries in France. There's more French Jewish people than there is in Israel.
Mhm.
Did you know that?
You know, I would imagine we might have more here in this country as well.
France.
Mhm.
France has the largest population of Jewish people.
Mhm.
You know, I just found that out. Right?
Mhm.
And they were talking about all these people, right? Because they was talking about all the protests that's going on in France and all sorts of stuff like that, right? But they were going back to Israel and they were talking to the people, right? My heart was hurting for these people. And I'm saying, like, the world is so against the people of Israel because nobody know how they feel.
Mhm.
Nobody know, like Marvin Gaye said, what's going on, right?
Mhm.
He said, talk to me so you can see what's
Right.
going on, right?
Absolutely.
Talk to me so you can see what's going on, right? And I'm listening to these people talk. They really ain't got no beef with these people.
Mhm.
And then I hear them talk. They really ain't got no beef with them. It's the goddamn government.
Well, it's always the government.
It's the government.
Always.
And you know what it is?
Mhm.
Is what you said in the very first part. See, I go back to the bloodline,
Mhm.
and you go back to the people who adopted the religion.
Mhm. Right.
You know, it's bloodline, and then there's religion.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? See, the bloodline ain't got no beef. It's the religion that got the beef.
Well, okay.
The religion is running the country. The bloodline ain't got no beef.
Well,
because when I'm looking at these people,
mhm.
you can see who's bloodline from who ain't bloodline. You can clearly see.
Well, you know, in every conflict, there's always the government. It's not the people. The people can figure it out, right? If the government will stay out of it, but that's just never the case, right? You know, like for us in this country, most of us don't know anybody in Iraq or Afghanistan.
Exactly.
Yet we went to war with these people because of what the government told us, right?
Right.
And then the government turned around and told us, oh, by the way, the intel was faulty. You told all of us that, look, this guy, Saddam Hussein, has weapons of mass destruction, and he had it aimed at America. And I believe it was President Bush that says the next time could be a mushroom cloud. Right?
And guess what? Saddam Hussein was the police of the Middle East.
Yes, he was.
He kept everybody. He even kept Osama bin Laden in check.
Well, and you know, all of a sudden, here we are bombing away these people. Most of us never even thought about Afghanistan. After the war ended with the Russians, nobody really thought about Afghanistan and Iraq. I mean, look, we had the first Gulf War, and their troops were surrendering in mass. They didn't have an army by the time we went back in. So what were we doing over there? You know what I mean?
Let me just say this here. How we talk about how the government got everybody brainwashed. How messed up things are. Right now, you know, this is going to be a little off topic. It's just how we just are so lost.
Mhm.
Right now, the United States is partnered up with the Saudis
Mhm.
in terms of oil. Right, their ships come directly to the United States, right there in New Jersey,
Mhm.
offload their oil.
Mhm. Aramco.
Yep. Offload their oil to the refinery right there, right? It gets refined. They make gasoline, they make kerosene, they make rocket fuel, they make jet fuel, they make all this stuff, right?
Mhm.
We're in bed with them, right? How do they transport all this fuel? How do they move all this fuel? And I'm going to tie it back into what we were talking about
Mhm.
in Hamas, right? How do they transport all this fuel, right? We see so much construction going on all the time.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
We have no idea. We say, you know what? They've been tearing up the BQE for 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
They fix it and they tear it up again. What are they doing? They've been tearing up the Belt Parkway. They've been tearing up the Grand Central Parkway. They've been tearing this up. What are they doing?
Mm-hmm.
You know, we just think they're just fixing the roads, right? Nah. Have you ever seen jet fuel delivered to an airport?
It comes through the Buckeye pipeline.
You know that.
Right.
Because of your job.
Mm-hmm.
How many common folk know that?
They don't know that pipe on the side, on the bridge,
Mm-hmm.
that silver pipe, about 6-inch pipe,
Mm-hmm.
is carrying fuel.
Right.
Right.
People don't know that.
Mm-hmm.
They don't know that.
Mm-hmm.
That every airport in the tri-state area,
Mm-hmm.
that fuel is pumped from the refinery
Mm-hmm. Directly to the tanks.
to the
Mhm.
airport.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And not only there, not only there, there's some other places
Mm-hmm.
that I'm not gonna mention that fuel is pumped directly to.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? But because we are so kept in the dark, that it's hidden plain sight.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of these things, like you said, were above ground because of the threat of terrorism.
Mm-hmm.
They have now moved them and put them below ground.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? They run them under the water now. You know what I mean? That's why they keep tearing up all these damn roads and those other stuff, because guess what? That refinery,
Got to carry that fuel.
one of my customers.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And that refinery in New Jersey, did, you know, that's the biggest refinery in the country.
On the East Coast, yeah.
No, not on the East Coast.
Mhm.
In the country.
Oh, really?
In the country. That's
Mhm.
the biggest one in the United States of America.
Oh.
In the United States of America, that's the biggest one.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So now they have created tunnels that they've been building for since the 80s to take that stuff from above ground underground.
Mm-hmm.
And I heard that lady talk about the Hamas tunnels. She said that it was like a huge spider webs
Mm-hmm.
underground. Well, that's how that stuff is down there, from what I was, from what I learned.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And how it branches off and go this way, that way, all over, because they got to pump that fuel all over the place.
The country was shut down without it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because it's rare, like you said, to see a tanker deliver fuel, right? The only time you see that is when the tanker goes to the fuel farm
Mhm.
and loads up a truck to bring it to private aircraft,
Right.
that don't have the piping, right? But pretty much every gate had the piping right there. You just have to connect and pump it up into the plane.
Yep.
But you know what? I wanted to touch on this situation with former President Trump. Currently he is under indictment. I think it's 91 misdemeanor and felony indictments that are kind of hanging over his head. And at the outset, a lot of people said, well, there's no way Trump will ever see the inside of a prison. A lot of people to this day say, well, Trump has done nothing wrong. Well, within the last 2 weeks, 4 to 5 lawyers have entered into agreements with the government to testify against Trump. Just, I think yesterday or the day before, his former chief of staff, Mark Meadows, entered into an agreement with the government. He has immunity. So if he has immunity, then obviously he has something to say. The government is not going to give you an immunity deal if you just going to sit there and tell jokes. So what is the likelihood now that Trump could be convicted?
Well, you know what I think is going to happen?
What's that?
I think he's going to cut the Crazy Eddie deal. I think he's gonna cut the Crazy Eddie deal. He's gonna cut a deal to walk away from politics,
Mm.
to save his money, to stay out of prison,
Mm.
and they're gonna create a narrative for him, you know, and he's gonna walk away and he's gonna try to hand pick somebody to step up to take his place
Mm.
that he can be the puppet master for.
But you know something? Even with Trump out of politics, like right now, Trump is not holding any office. But Trump is still,
He's the puppet master.
he's still a very powerful man, right? A lot of influence. And again, like I said, before we came on the air, one of the candidates for the Speaker of the House, Representative Emmers, had won the nomination to be the Speaker. He might have passed. However, Donald Trump
Called him a rhino.
said it would be a mistake to elect him, and he dropped out of the race because he knew that there is still a MAGA wing within the Republican Party, within Congress, that will not vote for him because Trump says so. So even if you tell Trump, look, you can't hold office anymore, right?
But
You can't silence him.
but behind closed doors, they all hate him. You know what it is? It's about money. They want to keep those cushy jobs,
Mhm.
making that $175,000+ a year and getting all those perks they get and all that money from them lobbyists
Mhm.
and pulling the millions of dollars a year. It's all about the money for them.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? So they're gonna toe whatever line they can to keep that job.
I get it. But for the position Trump is in right now, right? John Gotti didn't have this many indictments, right? And testifying against John Gotti was Sammy the Bull Gravano, right? And that sent John Gotti to jail, where he died in federal prison. Well, people are lining up to testify against Trump now. His chief of staff, his lawyers, Kenneth Cheesebro, the woman who represented him down in Georgia, she just entered into an agreement. Sydney, I can't remember her last name, another lawyer, she also entered into a plea agreement. All of these people are going to have to testify against Donald Trump. So if Sammy the Bull Gravano's testimony sent Gotti to jail, what is all of this combined testimony going to do to Donald Trump? Now, I mean,
Well, he's banking on one person saying not guilty.
Well, you know what? Listen, and this is interesting. Trump talks about the system is rigged, right? And a lot of people are saying that, well, if they can do it to Donald Trump, they can do it to me. The problem is they already been doing it to you. Where the hell have you been? You know what I mean? Do you think that the government just got out of control? Do you remember the MOVE family or the MOVE group down in Philadelphia?
Yeah, when they bombed that
They dropped a bomb on a house in the city of Philadelphia.
That's right.
Is that government out of control? Remember the Branch Dravidians? They went Texas mind their own business.
That's right. They went in there and slaughtered those people.
We brought a tank there.
That's right.
Right? Because the media told us. Now, the original charge against David Koresh was he sold the shotgun that was like an inch or two too short. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
And the sheriff in that county said, listen, if you want to arrest David Koresh, don't go to the house. He comes here every week to shop. You don't put these children and these other people at risk. No, the ATF, they had just got a raise, right, in terms of their budget. Just got an increase in their budget. So now you got to show, what are you doing that increase? What are you doing to deserve this increase? So they pulled out all the stops. So this didn't just happen. This has been going on to poor people, Black, brown, and poor people for centuries. Now all of a sudden, Donald Trump is saying, well, this is a rigged society or this is a rigged criminal justice system. Hell yeah. Ask me, I could have told you that. But despite that, when the now exonerated 5, when they were arrested, Donald Trump didn't say, you know what, that these boys deserve a fair trial because the system is rigged. That's not what he said. He said they were worthy of death.
That's right.
Right. In every New York periodical. Now he's playing the victim. But, you know, I just want to know what people think with so many people now lining up. And these are the people that were in Donald Trump's corner, right? Mark Meadows, who, you know, I mean, you talk about Donald Trump getting a crazy Eddie deal. Mark Meadows got the crazy Eddie deal. He has immunity from prosecution. He wrote a book talking about how this election was stolen from Trump.
But that's just in DC, right?
I think that's federal.
Yes.
Right. I think in the federal trial, he has immunity. Now, he hasn't been charged on the state level yet, but on the federal level, he has immunity. Now, here's somebody who called up Brad Raffensperger in Georgia, was on the phone when Trump asked for 11,780 votes. So if there is a conspiracy, and there must be because he just said, I want this immunity, he was deeply involved in this conspiracy. So he's got the crazy Eddie deal. And he is going to roll on Trump, as well as many of his lawyers. And, you know, what's interesting is I was watching Nancy Pelosi's daughter is a filmmaker.
Yes.
And she has a story out on, I believe it's HBO Max, called The Insurrectionist Next Door. And a lot of these people, despite the fact that some of them are looking at some lengthy jail time, still believe that Trump is the legitimate president, that the election was stolen. Even though the same people now that said the election was stolen, these very same people now are coming out saying, no, the election wasn't stolen. In fact, we told Mr. Trump that there was no credible evidence of any irregularities. Mark Meadows is one of them. Yet, despite what he was saying behind closed doors, he was going in front of the mic and saying, well, the election was stolen. But there were still people, and in this film with Pelosi's daughter, one of the guys said, I still believe the election was stolen. So I guess what it is, once you get something in your mind, once it's embedded in your mind, it's really hard to let it go, right? I mean, I think even if President Trump, as part of a plea agreement, had to say, look, I knew the election wasn't stolen. If he said it out of his own mouth at this point, there will still be people saying, nope, I still believe the election was stolen. And people are going to always believe that, you know what I mean? And, you know, we talk about what's happening in the Middle East and how the situation there is probably, well, I shouldn't say it probably is going to widen. It's going to happen. We have too much in terms of military personnel in that area. Too much is at stake for the U.S., for Israel, and for the Western allies. You know, we've been trying to fend off gold-backed currency for some time, but now the brick is here, and the only way we figure we can stop this brick from, replacing the U.S. dollar as the world reserve currency is to launch a full-scale attack against these other countries. You know, we've got Russia bottled up with Ukraine. China, we love to get bases onto Taiwan. You know, China's not going for it. So we took the next best option. We have bases in Australia, right, to attack China. You know, we have bases all over Eastern Europe, Poland, Latvia, and all these other former Soviet satellite countries in order to attack Russia. So we've been preparing for this eventual fight for some time now. But is it a fight we can win? You know, I mean, and look, I was in the military, right? I have so much respect for our fighting men and women. But we got to be honest, and I know people are not going to be happy about this, but the truth is, we, America, the American people, When's the last time we won a war against a standing army? You know, we fought in Vietnam for 10 years, something that we said we can mop up in 6 months. 10 years later, 4 million Vietnamese, Laotians, Cambodians dead. 58,000 Americans dead. And now, did we stop communist insurgency? Well, Vietnam considers itself a socialist country, and they're a trading partner now. So why do we do all of this? And, you know, the same thing now, right? We don't really have real objectives, do we? At least none that we know of, and I'm talking about the American people. The government, of course, wants to stave off gold-backed currency, trying to hold on to the legitimacy of the American dollar. But it's lost its prestige here and abroad. A lot of stores won't even take your dollar anymore. They want your credit card, they want your debit card. If they don't want your own currency in your own country, that ought to tell you something.
That's right. They'd rather pay a fee than take your cash.
Yeah. So, you know, all this is coming down the pipe. And, you know, we have issues abroad, Ukraine, Middle East, and now we have a country that is sharply divided. And the acts of violence we see are only going to escalate. And when you see people like this individual up in Maine that just walks into a bowling alley where children have a party and open fire, then goes to a bar and opens fire at another location, well, these things are going to happen with more frequency. Because I think the American people are being pushed to the brink. You know, I mean, you're not able to save any money. You can't send your kids to college. Some people are so desperate, they have to make the decision, okay, gas or food. If I don't have gas, I can't get to work. Or without food, I can't feed my children. You know, we saw in 2008 when the economy collapsed due to corporate America and their nonsense. Well, we're not far away from that now. Some of the same things that corporate America did in 2008 with the selling of derivatives and no doc mortgages and all this other nonsense, some of that's happening again. So we're headed, at least in my opinion, toward another crash. And, you know, once this gold-backed currency begins to spread, you know, around the industrialized world, America's done. You know, I mean, nobody will want the dollar. It will have no value like it has no value here. And America will grind to a halt. You know, we saw this happen. We didn't think it could happen, but in our lifetime, we saw the collapse of the Soviet Union. And I mean, for you, you know, guys our age, you remember going to school when there were fallout shelters in the New York City school system. They told us, you know, that the Russians were our enemy. Well, the Russian Empire, or, you know, the Soviet Union collapsed, and now we just have Russia. So if the Roman Empire can collapse, the Greek Empire, the English or the British Empire, which the sun never set on the British Empire, is now down to Wales, Ireland, Northern Ireland, the Falklands, maybe a few other places. So empires collapse, and America is on the brink of collapse, and we need to be cognizant of that. And, you know, these are conversations we need to have. Whether they're talking about the Middle East, whether they're talking about what's going on in this country domestically with our political situation, conversations you need to have. Simply because, again, if this conflict escalates, it'll be America's youth that'll be sent off to fight for democracy that doesn't exist here back home. So we're going to have body bags coming home. And if we go into Iran, I suspect body bags in record numbers. So these are conversations you should have with your young people, you know, because our lack of action in past generations have left these young people of this generation in very, very dire straits. You know, for them graduating high school and college, what are they going to do? This area, like the Poconos, where are you going to work and earn a decent living where you can actually buy a home, a car, raise a family? So, I mean, these are all conversations that we need to have, and we need to continuously have these conversations to let people know what's coming. so that you can't say when the bombs start falling into Iran, and if there's retaliatory strikes on American cities, you can't say you didn't know, because we sat by and watched our country destroy. Now, I'm talking about Iraq. I'm talking about Mesopotamia, the Fertile Crescent, one of the most important civilizations in history, and we bombed away at it. So, there's a scripture that says you reap what you sow. Is it possible that American cities can be bombed? Again, Iran has been developing hypersonic missiles that travel faster than our current defense system. So we may be in for some rough times. But with that, I see Brother Strategy is here. We got another show coming on with some great music. So y'all don't go nowhere. Y'all stay right here on Gynesis Radio. And I'll see you next week.